TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. So this afternoon, this afternoon where I'm at. So this is evening for you guys, right?
Yep.
Sure is.
Yep.
TikTok, time to rock. Whoa, got my audio on there. See that? Amateur
Good
move.
delay there.
Amateur move. This is why I got to retire, man. This is why I just got to give up on YouTube and go somewhere else. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have the famous Bob the Builder with us. We have his partner in crime at Speaker's Corner, Chris, and we have DanielApologetics. And I'm sure if you follow the world of apologetics, you're familiar with some or all of these guys. So we actually have some stuff we want to talk about. We're going to talk about reasons not to believe in Islam or reasons to believe that Muhammad's a false prophet. And we're kind of going to go around sharing some reasons. But before we get started, why don't we go around and you guys introduce yourselves for people who don't know you? So, Bob,
Okay,
how you
so
doing?
I'm all right. Thank you. Thank you very much for having us on. It's been great sharing the stage with you for the last couple of live streams that we've done, and I'm very grateful. Exciting things for you. I'm an evangelist based here in London. I do a lot of work at Speaker's Corner, which is where most people know me. But then I also do evangelism away from the corner on the internet, on the telephone, and in person. And yeah, I'm connected to a channel called Soko Films, but I've also got my own channel, which is Bob of Speaker's Corner. Is that intro enough?
Yeah, I've been like before I knew who you were. I always heard people talking about Bob the Builder. So how long you
Yeah,
been? You must have been out there for like at least 9 or 10 years or so. You've been out there for a while that I've been hearing about you.
yeah. For about 6 years, I've been doing it
Okay.
for 6 years, and I'm slowly moving into doing it full time. And yeah, I got given the tag um, Bob the Builder. Bob the Destroyer never caught on, and yeah. So, but I'm just thinking of all those young mums who are looking for Bob the Builder cartoons to put their little children in front of, and I'm trying to spare them. So I'm trying to give myself a different tag. So I'm trying to go by Bob of Speaker's Corner,
Oh, okay. Oh,
to
we'll change it
separate
then.
myself from that cartoon, and for the sake of all those mothers that need a 20-minute break from looking after their babies.
So, ladies and gentlemen, he said he's going to switch that to Bob of Speaker's Corner. But if anyone has an even cooler nickname that they can think of, because everyone's posting, he can fix it right now. But
Where do I see the chat?
oh, someone put Bobzilla.
Yes, that was
Yeah,
another
that's the
one
name.
that was another early one that never caught on.
Bobzilla.
Bobzilla, yeah.
Nice. All right, and then we have Daniel Apologetics.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Norway, but I live in Slovakia, and I found David Wood maybe 7 years ago, and that led me into like 4 years of Islamic studies. I started a channel 2 years ago, and I upload every week like 5-minute videos most of the times. Maybe 50% of my content, 50% of my content is on Islam, and the other half on atheism and theology, defending the resurrection of Jesus and the New Testament. Um, and yeah, I found I found that it was hard for me to evangelize in Slovakia because I don't speak the language, because I speak 5 other languages and I don't have room for more. And I
Did you say
wanted
you
to.
speak 5 languages?
Yes, I work as a translator. So yeah, and I'm trying to evangelize in Slovakia, but it's very hard because I don't have room for more language in my head. So it goes very slow. So I started a channel to preach to YouTube and 2 billion people. And when I'm in Norway, I speak at some events and churches on apologetics. And now I'm trying to. I'm working on a theodicy to gratuitous evil for a book publisher in Norway, and then I hope to get that translated to Slovakia so I can hand out booklets and stuff here. And I will of course make it all for free online, ebooks and video, PDF, whatever. And yeah, and maybe next year I will dive into divine hiddenness. And yes, but I like speaking about Islam because I love Muslims, and but I think they're being deceived. And when I'm talking and criticizing Islam, I'm not talking about necessarily the friendly Muslim neighbors, but more the Davagandists. And yeah.
And yeah, that's interesting that you're that you've taken an interest in Islam, because the topics you're talking about, divine hiddenness and the problem of evil and so on, over here in the U.S., almost everyone who goes into apologetics starts dealing with those issues that are geared towards atheism and leaving Islam aside, even though you're talking about 1.6, 1.8 billion people. So good to have you on board. All right, then we have Chris. Now, I think I heard about you most recently.
I can imagine, yeah. Yeah, my name's Chris. I'm Chris of Speaker's Corner. I started going to Speaker's Corner probably about a year ago, or coming up to a year ago now. I first got into apologetics when I became a Christian. I think that was, how long ago was that? Like 13 years ago or something. But I never actually saw it from an Islamic perspective. It wasn't apologetics against Islam. It was apologetics against atheism, against agnosticism. And what happened was, I think I found your channel, David, I think as far back as 2010, but I didn't actually watch it for any kind of study. I actually watched it just because it was entertaining. And I actually enjoyed your atheist content more than I did your Islamic content at the time. But then eventually, I think in about 2015, I found Jay Smith, and I heard his sort of revisionist views on Islam, and that captivated me. I couldn't believe there was a religion that had so little study into it, that people just didn't really know about its history anywhere near as much as they knew about the Christian history. So that captivated me. I started to look into that. I was reading tons and tons. And then, of course, I found his work at Speaker's Corner. And so I started to watch all the YouTube channels, Soko Films, DCCI, Hutton's channel. And then I thought, well, I'm actually based nearby, so I could actually travel there. I could actually go to Speaker's Corner and see what it's like. I've always had a desire for apologetics, for polemics, always been something I've been interested in, philosophy in particular. And I thought I could probably contribute something. And that's how I ended up meeting Bob. You can find like the video of me meeting Bob, I think, on Soko Films. And from there, I've just been sort of practicing debating with Muslims and just sort of taking it one day at a time. But it's been great so far.
Well, that's cool stuff. You guys probably have the best training ground in the world over there as far as debating.
I would definitely agree with that. Definitely agree with that. And I should just say, Jay Smith was the man that inspired me to get into this kind of evangelism as well.
Yeah, he's seems to have pioneered the Speaker's Corner. Like, I mean, it's like I went on YouTube, and some other people picked up on, hey, we could do this on YouTube, but long before that, Jay Smith was at Speaker's Corner, and then inspiring other people to say, hey, I could do that too. In fact, Nabil and I, this is funny. Nabil and I visited there because we were having some debates in the UK. So I don't even remember when this was, 2008 maybe, something like that. And so we went over there, and we went to Speaker's Corner, and we're hanging out, and you could of course hear Jay over there, and but me and Nabil were hanging out with the Muslims because we're sort of going around with them, and then in between debates and so on, and one of the Muslims came up and said, he has a jinn that lives in his throat, man. I was like, what? He goes, he has a jinn that lives in his throat. It gives him this power to speak. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He goes, look, we show up to the corner. It doesn't matter where he is. We set up on the opposite side of the corner from him, and we still hear nothing but him the entire time you're talking. And so he has a jinn. I'm like, you guys are attributing this to supernatural
How he did it for 20 odd years, I don't know. Like, I've damaged my voice box trying to do it in 6. So, like, I don't know how. Yeah, maybe there was a djinn inside, like a special grace.
I
Yeah,
really like seeing the.
and
Sorry, go on.
people don't realize how kind of what that does to you, because if you're not used to yelling over a crowd, my voice stripped out in like 2 minutes, and then I'd have to pause, and then and then I'm speaking, but my voice is cracking, and so on, and so I guess it gets better over time, but yeah, anyway, kind of fun. All right, so we're going to talk about uh, reasons Muhammad's a false prophet, or reasons that Islam is false. And we're sort of we'll just go around tossing in reasons until we have a pretty big bunch of them. So,
Sounds good.
Bob, how about we start with you, and then I guess I'll go counterclockwise here.
So I want to start off by just sort of framing the argument a bit. The Quran makes the claim that if it were from any other than Allah, they, meaning the Christians and the Jews, would find many contradictions therein, or many discrepancies therein, or many errors therein. So it sort of lays down a test, an acid test, by which we can assess whether the Quran is actually from Allah, and that's about whether it's got contradictions. And so the first reason why Muslims can safely leave Islam is because it is a book absolutely replete with contradictions at every conceivable level. So it's got contradictions, and I'm just going to give some examples. It contradicts science, for instance. We have in Surah 1886, it talks about the sun setting in a puddle of mud. And there's a corresponding hadith of Muhammad riding with a companion, and he asks his companion, "Where does the sun set?" And the companion says, "I don't know, but you would know, Muhammad." And Muhammad says to this companion in conversation that the sun sets in a puddle of mud. So obviously he understood it to be literal, not metaphorical, as Muslim da'i try to convince people today. The Quran describes the earth as being flat in Surah 15:19. And what's interesting about this is that there is a hadith, and unfortunately I didn't get time to find it. There's a hadith where Muhammad or one of his companions asks a girl, "Where is Allah?" And she just points up like that. She just points up. And then Muhammad approves of this idea. And the thing is, when you consider Sharia law and the idea of the sun setting and that describing the times that one begins fast and one settles fast based upon telling light from dark as the sun rises, it was assumed in the Quran and it was assumed in Islam that the world was the same the world over. So evidently these people did not know that the world was round, or at least the people that authored the Quran. Obviously, Muslims encountered Greek philosophy and they very quickly dropped the idea of a flat earth. But Muhammad himself, or at least the author of the Quran, whoever that might be, believed that the earth was flat. You have other scientific contradictions, such as in Surah 23:12-14. You've got a description of embryology, which is just completely wrong. It describes the idea that flesh comes after the bones, so that bones come before flesh. That it has a sequential system of embryology that doesn't fit the science. So I just want to give. I just want to have a look at some. Bear with us 1 second.
No problem.
So you've got this idea of bones clothing flesh, which is in the Quran. However, the mesoderm, and that's why I needed to look at some notes, because obviously I'm not a doctor, but mesoderm in the middle of, is it like in the middle of three layers of the early embryo?
Yeah, endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm.
There you go, the mesoderm. It's talking about the middle, and this goes on to form a series of blocks called somites, and these go on in to form the spinal cord that leads to the brain, and you've got this basically to a cartilage that develops, but it develops, and this is the important part. It develops along with muscle tissue. They develop at identically the same time. There's not a sequential stage, and there's good reasons to think that Muhammad was basically taking information that he was current in his own age, even that predates him, like Greek medical treatise, like from Galen, that talks about embryology in a sequential way, describing the formation of statues where the skeletal structure is formed and then the clay is put on top. And he was using that to explain the stages of embryology. And so there's nothing miraculous about it, but Muslims sell it as a miracle. So we've got scientific contradictions in the Quran. So that's the first reason. The other reason is that the Quran also contradicts history. The first and most important for us as Christians is obviously the crucifixion of our Lord. Now, if we can't know that Jesus Christ was crucified in history, we can't know anything about history at all. It's one of the most clearly established facts. It's talked about in multiple independent sources in the New Testament, as well as outside of the New Testament, including Roman and Hebrew historians. The Quran's claim that Christ wasn't crucified, which we find in Surah Al-Nisa, simply contradicts all available evidence, which is closer to the time, closer to the context, within the same period of the events. And if we're going to just dismiss the clear testimony of history, then we can't know anything about any history, not just Christian history, but Roman history, and that also includes Islamic history as well. The evidence is clear: Christ is crucified, and the Quran contradicts this, and that evidence, as I say, is both biblical and extra-biblical. The Quran in Surah 20:87 talks about Samaritans before Samaritans ever existed. They were a later group, but the Quran puts them further back in history than they actually appear. And this obviously is a problem. It means that the author of the Quran didn't know about the origins of the Samaritans. It talks about a mosque in Surah 17, Ayah 1. Obviously, mosques were something that were created and are a part of the Islamic worldview. They're not part of previous cultures or previous religions who didn't have a concept of mosque, and certainly didn't have any buildings that would have been described as mosques. The Quran also says that Christians believe in three gods in Surah 5:73, and that's obviously an ahistorical, inaccurate statement. So, I've briefly nipped through because these are all examples to the same, and each one is worthy of a presentation. But essentially what we've got here is an argument of contradiction. The Quran claims that it is free from contradiction and error, and it says that if it isn't from Allah. And what we've seen are multiple examples of where the Quran contradicts science, where the Quran contradicts history. And finally, it even contradicts itself. The Quran is very clear. Shirk is unforgivable. That is the idea of associating partners with Allah. But yet the Quran also has the story of Moses and the early Israelites. When Moses is up the mountain, the Israelites down at the bottom commit shirk. They worship a false god, and yet Allah turns to them in forgiveness. So it even contradicts itself. There's contradictory stories with regards to the story of Adam and Eve, but we'll come back to that later. So the list of contradictions is just endless. And if the Quran is so riddled with contradictions, it's clearly not from God.
Yeah, that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an example of how to give a reason and turn it into 37 reasons.
Sorry, yeah, that was one reason with examples
No, I know.
to the same.
Wait, I know. I get where you're coming. It's like I can say, because Muhammad was a pervert, and then give like 30 different, examples of
Examples
him
of his
being
perversion. Yeah, sorry. I'll be brief for next time. I hope.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just messing with you. On the point though of the way you put it, if we can't know that Jesus was crucified, then we can't trust anything from history. It's also interesting when you're thinking about the people who witnessed it, because supposedly Allah is tricking everyone into believing this. And what that would mean is you can't even believe what you see with your eyes when you're dealing with this God, right? You can't believe what you're seeing right in front of your face because he's tricking you. I think that might be one of my reasons if no one else touches it. But let's go on to Daniel Apologetics. By the way, everyone, the links to their channels are in the description box. So I'll point that out a few times as we go along. But anytime you want more information from these guys, you'll find it on their channels. All right, Daniel.
All right, so I'll give one big reason why I don't believe Islam is true. And it goes to miracles ascribed to Muhammad 150 to 200 years after his death in the Muslim traditions. And in the Quran itself, there are dozens of passages where Muhammad refuses to do miracles. And the Quran is the verbatim word, an eternal word from Allah. Muhammad is innama, a plain warner. And innama, meaning contextually in Arabic, a strong only, or indeed solely. So innama is the same word that Allah used to claim his exclusively divine attributes and being the only innama God. And no Muslims will say anything else about Allah. So unlike Jesus in Christianity, miracles were not a part of Muhammad's public ministry. In Islam, the verbatim revealed word of Allah, the Quran itself, is the miracle. And this miracle, Allah's eternal verbatim word, the Quran, was given exclusively through private revelations to Muhammad. Which brings me to the conclusion that Muslims that lived with Muhammad in the 7th century and today, 1400 years later, in 2022, are bound to take the words of a man running out of a cave 600 years after Jesus completely at face value and completely at blind faith. They are forced to take his word completely at blind faith and at face value. And as a smart, handsome man, at least that's what my wife and mommy says, when taking a deep dive into Muhammad's life and Islamic theology, I'm out. And as an evidentialist, I'm beyond out. And we barely scratched the surface here.
And what we can say is you're the handsomest one here in this conversation.
Say more.
I think that's true.
I think we'll all acknowledge that one. Yes. So Muhammad not being confirmed with miracles, and you can actually, and you touched on some of this, but you could actually break that down into multiple categories. So you have the Muhammad not being confirmed with miracles, not being able to perform miracles, but then you have all his followers lying about his miracles later on, more than a century afterwards, and they're making up stories. So you got the biggest bunch of liars in the world, who are the people who are telling you about this stuff. Then it's in the Quran, you've got Allah's explanations for why Muhammad couldn't perform miracles, which are incredibly stupid. And so, yeah, we can break that down into a bunch. And then what you were touching on of hey, you have to believe this guy no matter what. So the one guy you're going to believe one guy, and that one guy couldn't perform any miracles, and you're going to believe him over everyone else. And that's just, yeah, that's some wild stuff there. All right, now we are to Chris. Now, Chris, you've already heard a ton of reasons Muhammad can't be a prophet, or a bunch of reasons not to believe in Muhammad. Are we out of reasons, or are there more?
Oh no, we have a lot more reasons.
Okay.
I think for me, what I always find is, so coming from like apologetics background with the moral argument, I always found that quite convincing for God's existence. So I always kind of frame things from, well, what is the Islamic version of this? In other words, what are they actually asking me to believe if I were to become a Muslim? And really, I think it would be something like, okay, they would say the same theistic argument for objective morality. They would say that what we experience as right and wrong really is true. However, it's not just objectively true, it's also the fact that you have to look towards a 54-year-old man who had sex with a 9-year-old girl as the ultimate moral example for you to follow. And that for me is something I do not in any way think is conceivably possible. I don't think that's true. And I think that would be a mountain to ever overcome. And I think it doesn't just stop there. I think it permeates all of Islam, because the more you speak to people, the more I speak to people at Speaker's Corner, no matter how well intentioned they might be in their mind, the amount of lies that have to be told to defend Islam, in terms of even just his question about what Muhammad did with Aisha, there is an entire minefield of different replies, each that contradict each other, as a desperate attempt to try to get out of this. And when you talk to people who are of knowledge, you talk to imams, da'is, sheikhs, whoever it might be, it's just a game of trying to obfuscate the truth. It's not about getting to the truth. It's not about being honest with sources. It's not about telling you up front what they believe, but rather it's about hiding information away. It's a very sort of esoteric religion. They have different levels, and at the lowest level, you don't even know about Aisha. You don't even know about these things. You don't know about his adopted son, nothing like that. But then as you go up the levels, you start to introduce these really weird stories that try and explain it, but they just don't. Instead, they end up looking ridiculous to any outsider. Anyone who looks in can say, there's no way that's true. That sounds absolutely insane. And yet they'll look at you with a straight face and they'll tell you that it's true. And I think for me, it's those lies that have to be told to explain Islam. That for me, it's probably the biggest reason. Just as someone who wants to know, like, how on earth would you ever see something like that? And they just have to lie to make it sound more palatable.
And so you have what you started with. You could put that into a logical form, like modus tollens or something, and something like, if Islam is true, then Muhammad is the pattern of conduct for mankind. But premise two, Muhammad can't be the pattern of conduct for mankind, and therefore Islam is false. And then because Muhammad is supposedly the pattern of conduct, it's different for us, right? We can look at David and say, hey, look what he did. That was messed up there. We can view them as sinners, and we believe that God takes and uses really messed up people. But by Allah giving Muhammad that stamp of approval there, now they're like you said, now they're stuck with this stuff, and they just have to lie about it, because they can't say, what are you talking about? He's messed up.
Yeah, you end up going in like a cycle, because you end up starting saying, okay, in your Quran it says that Muhammad is a great example for the Ummah. So you start off with that. You say, do you believe that? Almost always I'll say yes. And then you say, okay, here are 20 different things I'm about to bring up that explain, that talk about Muhammad's behavior. I want to go through each one of these, and I want you to say that you agree that this is the example for all of the Ummah to follow. And you just sort of watch the mental gymnastics take place in real time. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of sad in a way. I mean, I wish it wasn't true. I wish they just become Christian and come to Christ instead. But obviously, like we have nothing like that in our religion. I mean, it just, even the comparison is just hard to justify. We're comparing what they believe is the most righteous and greatest prophet, Muhammad, compared to the person of Jesus Christ. And they're asking us to genuinely take that seriously from a moral perspective. Mm-hmm. And that to me is like, wow, that's not a rational person in the world to think that's it's just KO.
Yep, wild stuff. All right, for my reason, I will. Let's see. So this in a different direction, but sort of related to a point that Daniel brought up with, you have to believe everything Muhammad says, and you have to believe him more than anyone else. And he's the one guy who couldn't perform miracles. But in addition to that, on this issue of him being the one guy you have to listen to, because Muslims will say, no, we believe in all of them, but they don't believe in all of them. They believe in what one guy said about all of them. So they're still believing in just one guy. I mean, if I walk up to you and I say, hey, all prophets agree with me, that's not all prophets supporting me. That's me saying all prophets agree with me. But then the guy you're looking at, the guy that you trust more than anyone else to tell you about history and science and how to get to the truth about God and so on, that one guy is one of the most spiritually messed up people ever. So you've got Muhammad, comes out the cave. His first impression of his revelations was that they were demonic. So whatever he encountered, he thought it was demonic. And he became depressed and miserable and suicidal, tried to hurl himself off a cliff. It's actually, according to Muslim sources, his wife and her cousin who convince him, no, you're not possessed, you're a prophet. And then he believes them. But even after that, you have the satanic verses where Muhammad, kind of any of these could actually be its own separate reason, but the satanic verses when Muhammad receives a revelation, delivers the revelation to his followers, and that revelation promotes polytheism. So later on, he comes back and says, the devil made me do it. And then still later, he thinks he claims to be a victim of black magic, a magic spell that's giving him delusional thoughts and false beliefs. And then the entire time, of course, he's receiving revelations, and it sounds like something out of a horror film. So does not sound like the revelations that we would be familiar with in the Jewish and Christian tradition. It sounds like someone who's actually demon possessed or someone who has some serious mental health issues. That's what it sounds like. And if there were some sort of overwhelming evidence that, that could override all of these things, yeah. But when it's, hey, the guy who can't perform miracles or do anything else also happens to sound like the biggest nut job or someone who's demon possessed, and you have no other reason to believe in him, say you got a problem on your hands.
David, before we go into another round, are we all right just to talk about some of the points that have been raised? Because I think just a couple of supplementary thoughts and points to Daniel, Chris's, and yours contributions. Like in Abu Dawud Hadith 491, and this comes to Chris's point, that Muslims believe that Muhammad is this great example that we should be following him today. So what Muhammad did is a good example for us today. But in Abu Dawud Hadith 491, it states that you should command your children to pray when they're 7 years old. And if they're not praying by 10, then you should discipline them. And at 10 years old, siblings who are brothers and sisters should be separated into different beds. Now, what is that telling you if you think about that and connect it to Aisha? You've got the fact that you've got these hadiths that are coming later that are creating a fiqh, a system of laws that actually condemn Muhammad. Because Muhammad engaged a 6-year-old. What 6-year-old can give consent to marriage, I don't know. And then obviously they claim that he had sex with her when she was 9 years old. But it says in the hadiths that you separate siblings so they sleep in different beds when they're 10 years old, and you don't discipline them about not praying until they're 10 years old. So, you've got this problem that later Sharia laws actually, when you project them back onto Muhammad, would condemn Muhammad. Just as a point to Chris's.
But you're ignoring the fact that it was really hot that year, and so Aisha matured super fast. It was hot, so it was like a greenhouse, and she grew up like a plant in a greenhouse real fast. See, so
yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that that was a thing that happened in biology. It's a shame it's not happening today.
It's a miracle of Islam. Well, one thing I
Yeah.
always thought is about the diet, about how at that time, at that point in the world, in that region, they would have had a worse diet than they would have had today. So in effect, we actually know the effect that the effects that diet has on menstruation. So in effect, because you have a worse diet, you would have matured less by that age. You would have actually taken more years to actually get to the point where you start menstruating because of your poor diet. But I've never heard any Muslim trying to address that point or to give reasons why that isn't true. They just sort of brush it away and say, "I'm not going to deal with that."
But you're underestimating the miracle of camel urine.
Good for everything. Yeah. So before I jump on to Daniel's point, is there anyone else that wanted to talk about Chris's point on it? So I was just thinking, Daniel, like you mentioned the fact that you've got the Quran that says Muhammad performed no miracles, and it's very emphatic about that. And then you've got these later hadiths that contradict it entirely and just give accounts and accounts of him performing miracles. And I think actually that probably what's happening there is the reason why that's happening is for two reasons. Firstly, I suspect that 7th century Christians were making the argument like, but what miracle did he perform to prove that he was a prophet? Because, so I think that was one of the reasons why they needed to produce stories showing that he did miracles. But also, I think it's because bearing in mind that the hadiths were written 200 years after the 7th century, so 8th and 9th century. By this point, Islam had established as an empire, and there were weak Christians who were converting to Islam. And they were carrying with them that Christian mindset that says a prophet's got to have miracles. And so you had this double impetus for the Muslim community to create hadiths showing that Muhammad had miracles. One, weak Christians coming into Islam wanting to see their prophet do miracles. And two, strong Christians criticizing Islam, saying, where's all the miracles? And I think when you look at hadith sources, they seem to get massaged as to what's reliable and unreliable based upon the kind of criticisms that are being made against Islam, which is why the hadiths about Aisha are now becoming questionable, despite being Sahih for 1400 years.
And isn't it interesting that the solution for everything is lying? If it's Muhammad's moral problems and so on, what's the solution? Well, we'll lie about that stuff. But if it's any of these other issues as well, Muhammad couldn't perform miracles. Well, let's lie about it. And it's always the go-to solution. Hey, we got a problem here. Well, just lie about it. Because that the truth really needs an endless supply of lies to support it.
Yeah, I mean, the truth will set you free, but unfortunately, a lie snares you. And when I get that on video nearly week in, week out, like first they deny, then they see the evidence, and then they defend it. So the instinct is to lie. And I think the reason for that is that it's a combination of an honor culture mixing with a value system that values power over everything else, dominance over everything else. And I think those two things mix together in the Da'i to create a culture where lying is your go-to solution.
There's another point as well, though, right? Like, I think they've been lying about certain topics for so long now that we're actually at this amazing point in history where we're seeing those lies catch up with them. And it's kind of amazing watching how they're reacting to it. So we've heard at Speaker's Corner certain Da'is, if not just normal Muslims, just talking about how the Quran has been preserved letter by letter, word for word, and they just keep repeating this mantra again and again, no matter how many Qurans Hatem brings in, no matter how many videos we make, no matter how much you make, David Wood, exposing that, they'll still keep saying it. But now they're at a point where the Da'is, I think it's probably actually one of the reasons why they won't engage with us, is because we will expose that as a lie in front of everyone publicly. And it's quite easy to do now. So they're now trying to figure out how to lie about their previous lie to figure out how to make it all sort of work. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, we have. Unfortunately, we have video clips of what they've been saying for a long time. I've got Yasser Qadi on video from back in the day saying that from the time of Uthman down to the present, not one letter's difference between any two Qurans. And he knew that was a lie when he said it, because I have clips of him from the same time period when he's talking to people he refers to as students of knowledge, when he's talking about all the differences in the Qurans, right? He's like, yes, and so if you go to different parts of the world, they'll have different Qurans with different letters and different words. But I mean, I have Islamic apologetics books on my shelf where it's not one single letter's difference between any two Qurans in the entire history of the world. And now it's but you have it's because of the ahruf and the different kirat, and so Allah revealed it in the different ways, and this and this and that, and so they're trying to explain why there are these differences. But it gets pretty funny saying one Quran, and yet you have clearly different Qurans. Meanwhile, they're attacking the doctrine of the Trinity, right? For saying that God is one in one way, more than one in another way. But they've got a Quran that's one in one way, more than one in some other way. And yep, there are definitely some holes in the narrative there.
Did you not go to the maths class that said 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 1? Did you not go to that one? I think I did 7 there. I was hopefully doing 7.
Yeah. It's got to be. Yep.
I want to say, isn't one Quran illegal in Algeria and another one illegal in Saudi Arabia? I heard that. I think that Warsh is illegal in Algeria or Algeria, how you say it. So that's a bit interesting.
That would be interesting. You should show up with that Quran and see what they do, and then get video proof of it.
Have a check, but I mean, I would imagine that because Warsh is the mainstay North African one, so I wonder if maybe it's the other way around. But it'd be interesting to check that.
I have it on my note. I have it on my notes somewhere. I will try and find it.
It would be
keep on talking.
It would be cool to show up with some sort of banned Quran, and then they say, you brought a banned Quran, and you say, what are you talking about? There's only one Quran. And then, no, there's not, liar, and then they attack you for lying.
Isn't that Robert Spencer's amazing critical edition of the Quran, which I would encourage everybody to get? I got a copy. I think that's pretty much a banned Quran.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now according to Amazon, it's no longer a Quran. They just decided that it's not a Quran because he had the number one Quran. So anyone who searched for a Quran, Robert's Quran was number one. So they just took it out of the Quran category. It's no longer the critical Quran is no longer considered a Quran.
That's hilarious.
Not surprising.
Coming to your point, and I just invite any Muslim who's doing this to watch this, which is to compare the demon possessions that you see in the New Testament to what the Hadiths say about when Muhammad received his revelation. Just do the comparison. The physical trauma that was involved, the loss of your own ability to loss of your own bodily controls. The demon possessions of the New Testament look a lot like the divine revelation that you see in the Hadiths, and I don't think you should ignore that, folks. I really don't think you should ignore that. Sorry.
Hussein Mashni here says Warsh is illegal in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's a good question.
And there's another one illegal in Algeria, but I don't remember, and I think it'll take a little bit long time to go through the notes to find it, but something I recently come across.
And that is interesting that, again, for years they're saying one Quran, and you've got different Qurans that are illegal in different areas. And
the Warsh is meant to be one of the 7 Aruf as well.
Yeah, that's the point. They're not apparently they're not fine with it. So you got the guys who are fine with it, fine with the differences, and yet sounds like It sounds like they've absorbed the idea that there can only be one Quran, but that means they have to eliminate all the others, and they're not cool with the differences. Which, I mean, notice it's that's parallel to Uthman's view. So even if you wanted to grant there were these different ahruf, and however you want to interpret that, it's not going to make sense if you try to say dialects or something like that. It's not going to fit with what we know, because even guys who spoke the same dialect were using were
fighting,
quoting things differently and fighting over it,
Yeah.
and so on. So it doesn't make sense that it was dialects. But then, so suppose you grant that whatever it was, that the Quran is revealed in 7 different ways, or whatever you want to say. Well, great. What gives Uthman the right to just burn 6 of the 7? Who gave him that authority? But it seems to be the same idea. There can only be one. So even if it's revealed in a bunch of different ways, we have to clean up Allah's mess here and narrow it down to one. And they still can't do it.
It's a big contrast to the Bible, isn't it? How we include our footnotes, we are proud of them, we don't hide them, but we have a completely different standard to the New Testament or the Bible than the Quran. God used humans as instruments, not puppets.
And notice, if you're you take an issue, so you have textual criticism of the Bible, and the goal in Christianity is to get to the truth, right? So you want to preserve any manuscripts you can find. You want to compare them, because anytime you have, let's say, a word difference between 2 manuscripts, you want to figure out what the original word was. And you don't do that by just saying, I like this one, let me burn all the others. But in Islam, it's burn everything, cover up the evidence, lie about it, and so on. And in Christianity, it's, hey, we've got some differences here. Let's make sure people know about them so that people can come to an informed decision. There's some radically different values here going on.
And I think
you go ahead, Bob.
No, I was just going to say it's important for Muslims to recognise that we don't see our Bible in the same way that you see your Quran. So we don't look at it in the same way. We don't understand it in the same way. For us, the word of God would be the person of Jesus Christ, not the Bible in that sense. The Bible are the inspired words of men, which means that it's a different standard that it has to be measured by, and sort of textual variants of which Christians most Christians are now quite au fait with and familiar. It's about whether they affect the message. If I put a drop of orange juice in my cup of tea, but it's only 1 drop, then yes, the substance has been changed. It's now tea and orange juice. But if 99.999% of the liquid in my cup is tea, it's still going to taste like tea. It's still going to burn my lips. The 1 drop of orange juice is not going to impact the substance of the tea, as it were. And it's the same with the message of the Bible. The question is, has the message been corrupted? And the textual variants, when we study them, show that the message is sound and remains the same. Christ died, Christ was crucified, Christ is risen, Christ will come again.
And so the solution there, from an Islamic perspective, would be to also lie about the Bible.
Yes. Totally.
Let's lie about that. Did you know that you have 70 different Bibles and they say all different things?
That's the da'i, definitely. That's the da'i. I mean, I was speaking to this weekend. I've been in contact with 3 Muslims who've all become Christian. Not this weekend, this last week. So I was going up north to see how they were doing. And the thing is, it's not that all Muslims are lying. It's that the da'i are liars, and lots of the ulama are liars. There's lots of sincere Muslims out there, and they tend to be the ones that leave when they encounter the stuff that we're talking about,
John Smith here said, all Muslims are supposed to have perfect memory, yet none remembers what are the ahruf. Perplexing. And the idea isn't that, of course, that all Muslims have to have perfect memories. It's that supposedly human memory is this perfect tool for preserving the Quran, and yet this perfect tool for preserving the Quran, they couldn't even preserve what in the world ahruf meant.
Yep.
They don't know what it means. They don't know what it means. In fact, that was part of the problem with the holes in the narrative that Yasser Qadi was pointing out. These theories that we say, even once you get to the students of knowledge, where they're aware of the differences, then they come up with explanations for why there are differences. But when you do a deep dive, as he says, then you find out it just doesn't work. None of these explanations work. And so you'd think that when Muhammad says, the Quran was revealed as these 7 ahruf, or whatever number you want to come up with, someone would have some clue about what that means. The most common explanation, dialects, doesn't even work with the most basic data we know about these differences and so on. And so, yeah, got to keep lying.
And when the Quran was, if you believe the hadiths, when the Quran was at risk of being lost, their instinct was to write it down, not to set up a memorization camp, but to go and look for the literature and to create a manuscript. So obviously they didn't have that same confidence in the ability to just remember, as Leighton Dayi would claim that they did. Do you want to do a round 2?
Yeah. Let's go around 2. I just thought that was that's kind of a funny point with the hey, how. Matter of fact, I mean. What it looks like at the earliest level was that the Quran is supposed to be something that's memorized and recited, and it seems like the even in the hadiths where it talks about them writing things down on leaves or on shoulder blades, flat stones, and they're writing things down, it seems like these were just aids to memory, like, hey, let's jot this down so that I can go back to my tent and then memorize it. And then, yes, once these guys start getting killed in battle and they're losing parts of the Quran, then it's, oh my goodness, this was really stupid. It's a really stupid way to preserve a book. Can we actually get a real book here? And so it kind of backfired on them.
Yeah. And for those that need to know where you can find that, you look in Sahih al-Bukhari.
All right, so back to Bob for round 2.
Okay, so round 2, which is that if you read carefully the Quran, in places like Surah 6:25 and Surah 8:31 and a whole bunch of other places, but I don't want to give endless examples. Allah says that the accusers of Muhammad accuse him of retelling tales that he's heard, that the people have heard before. So in other words, Muhammad tells a tale, the people go, oh, we heard this from the Jews, or we heard this from the Christians, or we heard this from, these are known to our forefathers and our forefathers' forefathers. These are old stories. You're just rehashing them. Now, that's an interesting observation that Allah has, given the fact that in the 20th and 21st century, we've got access to loads of ancient literature, which we can compare to the Quran. And what we find is that there's wholesale copying and borrowing from the Quran, where it takes stories that were known to communities before Muhammad was born, and then they are found in the Quran. So some examples of that. So the one example would be the story of, let's just have a look, bear with us. The story of our Lord speaking, the talking Jesus. You've got it in the Quran. Well, let's have a look. So, yes.
It's also in the Arabic infancy gospel, I think.
Yes, I'm coming to that. So the relevant passages are in Surah 19, 29 to 31, Surah 3:46. And here it talks about the child Jesus speaking from being a baby. Now, the problem with that is that the Arabic gospel of the infancy of the Saviour has exactly that same story, and I'll read it. It says, we find what follows in the book of Joseph, the high priest, who lived in the time of Christ. Some say that he is Caiaphas. He has said that Jesus spoke, and indeed, when he was lying in his cradle, said to Mary his mother, I am Jesus, the Son of God, the Logos, whom thou hast brought forth, as the angel Gabriel announced to thee, and my Father has sent me for the salvation of the world. So there you've got a story about a talking Jesus, and in the Quran, in the verses that we've quoted, we have Jesus speaking in 19:29-31. But she pointed to him. They said, "How should we speak to one who is a child in the cradle?" He said, "I am indeed a servant of Allah. He has given me the book and made me a prophet, and he has made me blessed wherever I may be, and he has enjoined on me and prayer and the poor rate so long as I live." Now, I don't know how he performed salah as a child, a baby in the mother's in the mother's hands, but apparently that was enjoined on him for as long as he lived. But the thing is, what you've got there is an example of a story that's clearly known, and it's being borrowed and modulated and changed for the sake of Muhammad's own agenda. Another example of the same would be the raven and the burial of Abel, which you can find in the Quran in Surah 5:31, where Allah sent a crow to scratch the ground to show him how to cover a dead body. And this same story can be found in the Midrash Tanhuma. Now, bear with us 1 second, just so I can find it in my notes. Now, and you can also find it in the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. And there's some argument about the fact that, when is the latest redaction or the earliest available redaction of these stories available to us? But these stories are understood to predate Muhammad, and then were written in some cases in a later stage, or at least in the final form that we find them today, after Muhammad. But the fact that you've got these within Jewish tradition, going back before Muhammad, like the Midrash Tanhuma, then what you've got is an example again of Muhammad borrowing a story that it doesn't really belong in the Quran as an independent story. It's something that he's taken from somewhere else. Another example to the same would be the fact that Satan, or Iblis as Muslims know him, in Quran 7:11-18 and 15:28-35, refuses to prostrate to Adam and Eve. Now, the thing is, that story also appears in the apocryphal story of the life of Adam and Eve, which is a 4th century Jewish Hellenistic work, in which the angel refuses to bow. So I'll just read from the life of Adam and Eve, a 4th century work. "And with a heavy sigh the devil spoke, 'O Adam, all my hostility, envy, and sorrow is for thee, since it is for thee that I have been expelled from my glory, which I possessed in the heaven in the midst of the angels, and for thee was I cast out in the earth.' Adam answered, 'What dost thou tell me? What have I done to thee, or what is my fault against thee, seeing that thou hast received no harm or injury from us? Why dost thou pursue us?' The devil replied, 'Adam, what dost thou tell me? It is for thy sake that I have been hurled from this place. When thou wast formed, I was hurled out of the presence of God and banished from the company of the angels. When God blew into thee the breath of life, and thy face and likeness was made in the image of God, Michael also brought thee and made us worship thee in the sight of God. And God the Lord spoke, Here is Adam, I have made him in our image and likeness.'" For those of you not familiar with English, worship simply means to give a certain level of honor. It doesn't just mean the worship of God. It can be any kind of honor that you give to any being. "And Michael went out and called all the angels, saying, 'Worship the image of God as the Lord hath commanded.' And Michael himself worshipped first when he called me and said, 'Worship the image of God the Lord.' And I answered, 'I have no need to worship Adam.' And since Michael kept urging me to worship, I said, 'What dost thou urge me?'" So basically, Satan is refusing to give honor to Adam. And this is a story that we find in the Quran, And in both stories, for that refusal, Iblis of the Quran and Satan in the life of Adam and Eve are cast out of paradise. So what you've got is a very clear parallel of a story that, and in the time of the 7th century, bearing in mind Muhammad would have travelled far and wide as a traveller, he would have heard these stories and had conversations with Jews and Christians and heretics and other religions. And he's hearing these stories orally, so he doesn't need to read them. Remember how amazing the Arabic memory is? So he remembers these stories and then he regurgitates them. But then the Arabs that hear the story say, we've heard these stories before. So this is a demonstration of why the Quran is false, and it's a very good reason why Muslims should abandon Islam. Sorry, I know I tend to go on a bit. I just wanted to make sure I made my point.
No, you're good. And I think it's this another example of an area where you can make the point, and then you can make multiple points, multiple further points out of it. Like one of the interesting things is that some of the stuff that Muhammad was stealing just doesn't make sense in an Islamic context, because I mean, if something like shirk is the worst possible sin, then you shouldn't be bowing down to Adam, right? I mean, you shouldn't even give a hint that you're bowing down to Adam the way you would bow down to God, and yet everyone bows down except Satan. So notice, like the one guy who's the one faithful Muslim there says, "I'm not bowing down to a mere human being." And you can even interpret Satan's words in the Quran that way, right? Like he spoke with pride and said, he's just made out of clay, whereas I'm from fire. You don't have to interpret that as pride. It's wait a minute. He's made from something lower than I am. There's no way I'm supposed to be bowing down to something greater than me, not something that's lower than me, that's made out of something less than me. So no way. And then he's in trouble with Allah for saying, no, I'm not bowing down to, this guy made out of mud. And then on the issue of Muhammad clearly being familiar with these stories, you mentioned the story about Jesus speaking as a baby, and then in the gospel, the infancy of the Savior, the Arabic infancy gospel, right after, and you quoted this passage, but right after it says that Jesus was lying in his cradle and said to his mother, "I am Jesus," he says, "I am Jesus, the Son of God, the Logos." So what he says is that he's the Son of God. And then Islam copies the idea of the story that Jesus is speaking at as a baby. But then if you look at what the Islamic version is, so it has Jesus saying, instead of saying, "Hey, I'm the Son of God, the Logos," he says, "Peace on me the day I was born and the day I die and the day I shall be raised to life." And then it says, "Such was Jesus, son of Mary. This is a statement of the truth concerning which they doubt." So the Quran says, I'm giving you the truth, and these other guys doubt the truth of what I'm giving. So other people are familiar with the story too, and they're doubting Muhammad's version of events. And then the very next verse says, "It befits not the majesty of Allah that he should take unto himself a son." Now, in the Islamic version, there's not a word about anything having to do with a son. It doesn't say one word about Jesus being the Son of God or anything about people claiming that Jesus is the Son of God. It just says, here's what Jesus said, and then it said, God doesn't have a son. Well, what are you responding to? What are you responding to? There's nothing in the passage that had anything to do with that. You just blurt out, "It's not a son," right? Well, if you're familiar with the story, and what Jesus says as a baby is that he's the Son of God, and all your listeners are familiar with that story, then as soon as you say Jesus spoke as a baby, they're thinking, "Oh yeah, he claimed to be the Son of God." But he's not a son of God, right? So it's clear that they're familiar with these stories. And it's the same thing that you pointed out. They're all familiar with these stories. Muhammad's repackaging them and putting an Islamic twist on these things. And it's so weird, because it's like, how much more obvious can you make it? I mean, he is obviously plagiarizing these stories. It's in the Quran. The people who are there constantly accuse him of plagiarism. When he's called out for plagiarism, Allah gives the stupidest excuses ever. Oh, no, 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 no. The guy you're saying he's getting this stuff from is foreign, whereas Muhammad's revealing this stuff in Arabic. So nothing can ever be translated according to Allah. It's like the stupidest explanation in response to clear examples of plagiarism. But yeah, that's a pretty wild problem there. All right. Well, now back to Daniel. I hope you're not out of ammunition there, Daniel.
Oh no, not at all.
Nope.
So for no, so for time's sakes, I will try to be quick, and I will try to squeeze in two of them. So the obvious one, I'm sure for many Christians, and I think every Christian should learn this, is the Quranic or Islamic dilemma, and that is that the Quran affirms the inspiration, the preservation, and the authority of the gospel. Problem is that the Quran denies the deity, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So the Quran contradicts the gospel on core theological points, and according to the Quran, nobody can mess with Allah's words as well. So we have a big problem there, and of course Muslim will respond with, well, they will just try and ignore parts of the argument and just respond with that the gospel is corrupted. Problem is that textual criticism shows that there is nowhere near the level of corruption that or changes that Muslim needs for making that argument. And it doesn't matter if you ask Dan Wallace, who will say that there's, or many others. We have so many manuscripts, early Greek manuscripts. It's an embarrassment of riches, and I quote him there. Or you can go to Bart Ehrman, Muslims' favorite biblical scholar in textual criticism. He will say in Misquoting Jesus, his book from 2005, I believe, that there is nowhere near, or like there is the core theology and the core doctrines of Christianity is still there, and he wouldn't have any disagreements with his mentor Bruce Metzger. So yeah, there is no evidences of this corruption or another gospel. Deity of Jesus we have so much early from the gospel evidences and manuscript evidence to church fathers. It just doesn't hold up. And I will just now, for time's sake, squeeze in a very fast one more reason. I just have to say that I just agree with Aisha, Muhammad's child bride and mother of all believers, because she says this is from Sahih Bukhari, and this is regarding Surah 33, ayat 51. And I was going to read the whole thing, but it takes this a bit long. I think I can skip it. Basically, Muhammad is getting privileges from Allah to just have his ways with any woman that offer themselves to him. And to just go to the punchline, Aisha said to the Prophet, I feel your Lord hastens in fulfilling your wishes and desires. And yeah, I'm with Aisha on that one. This is exactly how I feel when I read. And this is just one story. I mean, we could touch on his marriage to, or taking the wife of his adopted son. Or we could go to that he's too shy. Muhammad is too shy to send his dinner guest away. So he gets Allah to intercede for him there also and have his back. So yeah, it's these really the eternal creator of the universe, the God. He do this to a guy in 7th century. And it's just one of many stones on the scale that tips it in that Islamic truth claims fails.
And on the issue of the Quran affirming the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the Jewish and Christian scriptures while contradicting them on basic doctrines, notice the parallel there to the issue of miracles. You've got what Muhammad's going around claiming during his time, which is he can't perform miracles, and here are all the reasons he can't perform miracles. But later Muslims get called out on this, and the solution is to lie about it. Right? No, actually, he did perform all these miracles, and here's our paper that says it. Sorry, let the ink dry a little bit on this, story 200 years after the time of Muhammad. But it's we have to lie about it. But then the earliest generations of Muslims, because of what Allah revealed in the Quran and what Muhammad said, were totally convinced that Jews have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. It's good as gold. That's why the Quran says Jews don't need Muhammad. They've got the Torah. And then Christians, the Quran doesn't say Christians you need to judge by the Quran. Surah 5 verse 47 orders Christians to judge by the gospel, which only makes sense if we have the preserved gospel. And so the earliest generations of Muslims, the position, which is the position of the Quran and Muhammad, is that Jews and Christians weren't properly following their scriptures. They're misrepresenting them in their speech because most people couldn't read. And so when we're speaking about our scriptures, we're misrepresenting them. That was the criticism. And so Allah's point is, hey, you need to stop listening to liars and go back to what your texts say and obey them. And until you obey them, you're in trouble with Allah. It's later generations of Muslims, the problem, they recognize the problem, it gets pointed out to them. And so the solution is, once again, to lie. We'll lie about what Islam says. We'll lie about what Allah and Muhammad say about the Torah and the gospel. And we'll lie about the history of the text of the Torah and the gospel. And it's just
and this
always come back to lies.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to say that this is Sahih al-Bukhari 4788, so people can look that up, and it's not Daif, it's Sahih al-Bukhari.
Right, back to Chris.
Hi, so I actually want to jump on a little bit what we were just talking about regarding the preservation of the Injil and the Torah, and how the Quran affirms that there is indeed a preserved Torah and Injil at the time of Muhammad. Now, this is interesting because I think a really quick way of bringing out exactly how ridiculous this position is that Muslims have gotten themselves into through the da'is, telling lies, and ultimately it goes back for centuries holding to this narrative. But if you just ask them, was the Injil preserved at the time of Muhammad? And then say to them, if you say that it wasn't preserved at the time of Muhammad and it was already corrupted, then Muhammad came and confirmed a corrupted Injil and hence is a false prophet. If you say that actually, no, it was preserved at that time and was corrupted later, then what they've now just done is they've now just given you the pathway to say, well, now we can look at manuscript evidence to confirm exactly whether or not Muhammad was lying. Either way, it's a sort of knockout blow. They have to pick one of those two horns, and they're going to be committing to either one of those two. And to this day, I haven't actually got a good answer from Muslims that I've been speaking to at Speaker's Corner. They don't know how to answer that question. They realize the dilemma and they sort of dance around it because there is no answer.
And if I could make them focus on and address any one problem, that would probably be it. Guys, answer the questions here.
Yeah, I think just to say the Assyrian church, the churches in the Middle East, they have their own copies of the Bible from the 7th century, so we can actually go to those churches and see what the Middle Eastern church was using in the 7th century. And the reality is, it poses no problems for the Christian narrative. It poses no problems for the Christian story, or for our trust in the text. But it causes a whole bunch of problems when you go to the 7th century texts of the Middle Eastern churches and then take on board what the Quran is saying, which is it never accuses the text of being changed. It only ever accuses Christians of lying about the text. But that means, and it does affirm that the text is there. It just says, well, why don't you live by it? But we can see what it looked like. And that blows a massive hole in the entirety of the Islamic worldview, as well as centuries worth of Islamic polemic against the Christian faith.
Yeah, just say one thing to that. We have Codex Vaticanicus and Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Alexandrinus, all from the 3rd and 4th century, and they are available in museums as well.
Here in London.
They basically have the entire 4 gospel accounts and more. Just think one of them I mentioned missing the Book of Revelation or something. So, and keep in mind that Christianity spread out and took over 2/3 of the Roman Empire within 300 years or so, under heavy persecution periodically throughout that period. And there are manuscripts everywhere, and there's no way that with the amount that we have today that we can have missed something. There is I mean, we know what Christians believed at the time of Muhammad. It's late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we grant the whole Islamic premise that the text has been changed, and the next question is when and where, but given the manuscript evidence that we've got, the only logical place that text could have occurred was in the immediate next copy of the text. So in other words, we're pushing the whole corruption hypothesis right back to the time of the original. And if we're pushing the whole corruption hypothesis right back to the time of the original, then that means we've got the original. Do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, and also the natural conservative nature of all religions to try to preserve that which has been received makes it highly unlikely that someone was going to radically rechange the text to put in a completely different message. It's just not a realistic idea. And ultimately, Muslims have still got to produce the original that it's changed from, because you can't prove a change unless you've got an original to prove the change from.
No, that's right. And you know, there is this early creeds also, and most scholars will affirm that those creeds that has quite high Christology as well, like 1 Corinthians 1:15 and Romans 10:9. Like these creeds go back very early, and you will have all from Christian scholars saying this to atheist scholars saying this. Not that they are granting it, but they are early. They are within months to couple of years. So they contain the core doctrines, the deity, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and the salvation and all that. You know, this fish, this Jesus Christ, Savior, God's Son. This is in these early creeds, and how would you corrupt that? It's so heavy and so early. So no.
Well, the other logic. Sorry, David. I don't know if you want to keep sitting on this point or move on, but
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, is the fact that you know Muslims say that Paul is responsible for the corruption. Well, we Christians accept Paul, so we don't believe that anything he wrote was corrupt. So if you're saying that Paul corrupted it, and we're saying we accept Paul, then we all agree we've got the original. Does that logic make sense to people? Like, do you get why I'm saying that? Like, if they're saying Paul changed it, and we're saying we accept Paul, then everyone's in agreement. We've got Paul, so we've got the original. There was no corruption.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is why they're basically trying to take it back even further than this now. I think they're moving away slightly from the Paul corrupted everything argument to the Jesus didn't speak Greek argument, therefore he did have the Injil, at least it was revealed to him, except he was completely unable to in any way translate it, and hence it was immediately corrupt. It's basically the argument that no one could possibly ever translate into Greek, which I think is a terrible argument, and I think it's really, really bad that you have to rely on things like that, just to basically say, look, there is no possible way that two people someone who would have known Greek, because it was a spoken language at the time, would have known Aramaic or Hebrew, and couldn't have possibly translated from one to the other. It is literally impossible. It could not have happened. I think that's such an extreme argument.
And notice it's another example where you've got these layers to the problem, where as soon as they give one response, they're opening another door. So it's just very common to say, but your New Testament's written in Greek and Jesus didn't even speak that. But wait a minute, according to the Quran, the book that Jesus had is called the Injil, and that's a transliteration of a word that goes back to euangelion, which is a Greek word. So Jesus brings a book with a title in Greek, And why is he bringing a book with it that has a Greek title, if it's not supposed to be in Greek? And it's just there's just no way to make this coherent. What it's like, hey, here's a problem, guys, then let's make something up to avoid that problem, and the answer that they make up causes another problem and doesn't fit over here, so then they have to make up another answer to fix that. And it's like they're in this sinking boat, and it's got all these holes in it. They're trying to like plug up all these holes in the boat.
Did you just say there's holes? Is there holes in the narrative?
There's holes in the boat. There's holes in the narrative. They're all over the place. All right, so I guess I'll finish up this round. I wasn't going to make this point, and I don't know if Big Mahmoud here is serious or joking, but it's a perfectly valid point against Islam either way. But Big Mahmoud here says, "Read this, please." They will answer, I don't know how to read. Isaiah 29:11-12. How do Christians explain this verse? Oh, I think he's got us there. Look at that. And so for anyone who's unfamiliar with the argument here, so someone's told to read, and then the person answers, I don't know how to read. But if you look at the Islamic stories about Muhammad receiving revelations, the angel Gabriel tells him to read, and Muhammad says, I can't read. So here you have it. This is a clear biblical prophecy that Muhammad, the final prophet, is going to be given a book, and he's going to answer, I don't know how to read. Now, I was just going to quote what Isaiah actually says. I see you flipping around there, Bob. Are you going for your next point, or did you just want to?
No, I'm going to the biblical passage here.
I've got it right here too. But this is a perfect example of how you have all of these problems, and they're all rolled up, and it's just lie upon lie upon lie. So why would someone want to lie and try to insert Muhammad here? Well, it's because the Quran says, Surah 7, verse 157, that Jews and Christians find Muhammad mentioned in the Torah and the Gospel. And so if the Quran is true, we have to be able to find Muhammad mentioned in the Torah and the Gospel. Here they're actually interesting because they go to the book of Isaiah. And so they're in the Islamic concept, they're obviously including the entire Old Testament as Torah, and that's fine. But now include the entire New Testament as the Gospel. That be consistent here. But if you look at what the book of Isaiah actually says, in verses 1 through 10, it's Isaiah prophesying this judgment against the people of God. So judgment is coming because of their rebellion. And so he gives the vision of God pouring out his wrath on people. This is the vision. This is what the book of Isaiah is. And then you get to verse 11, which our buddy cited here, but he didn't quote he didn't even quote the entire verses. That's strange. Let's read just the two verses he gave. And the vision of all this, notice he left that part out. And the vision of all this has become to you like the words of a book that is sealed. Notice the vision of what? The vision of everything he's talking about, not the Quran. It's what he was just saying. So the vision of all of this has become to you like the words of a book that is sealed. When men give it to one who can read, saying, read this, he says, I cannot, for it is sealed. And when they give the book to one who cannot read, saying, read this, he says, I cannot read. So notice what's going on here. Isaiah is talking about people's stubborn rebellion against God's warnings of his wrath that's coming on the people. So Isaiah says, look, even when God reveals it to you, when God reveals it, he gives it to you in a book. He gives you the revelation and delivers it to you. You start making excuses for why you're going to rebel against it. So he says, here's the revelation. It's written down for you. It's like a book. Here it is. God's telling you what he's going to do. And you say, oh no, I can't read that. It's sealed. Or I can't read. They're people making excuses for why they're rejecting God's revelation. And so notice Muslims then say, this is Muhammad. Wait, Muhammad was just in rebellion against God's revelation and refusing to listen to God's warnings? Because I'm fine with that. If you want to say this is this is a prophecy of Muhammad. This is a prophecy of, again, this is a prophecy about all people who rebel against God and refuse to listen to his revelation. So if you want to say that's Muhammad, that's fine. But notice, if you want to say, also, if you wanted to say, well, when it says, when they give the book to one who cannot read, saying, read this, he says, I cannot read, that's talking about Muhammad. There's nothing here about this being a prophet. These are people who are responding to the prophet, right? The prophet is Isaiah. He's giving the warning, and the people are coming up with excuses for resisting. So they're putting Muhammad as the person who says, I cannot read. So he's the one making the excuses. But notice, they want to say that's about a prophet. Well, again, it doesn't say one word about this being a prophet who's refusing to listen to the words of the prophet. But if you want to say that this is talking about a prophet, well, great, there's another prophet there, because there's the guy who says, I can't read because it's sealed. There's a person who is literate, but he's saying, I can't read that because it's sealed. So if one is a prophet, the other one would have to be a prophet, because you're saying that this passage is talking about prophets, right? Okay, so where's that prophet? Where's that prophet who says, I can't read, it's sealed? Where's that prophet at?
Can I just say something to that, David?
One second. He hasn't come yet? He hasn't come yet? So that prophet's still coming after Muhammad? Okay, then Islam is false. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Oh, that was beautiful. I just want to say something to, like, a tip for Muslims, but also Christians in general. Use the acronym STOP. S, situation. T, type of literature. O, object. And P, is it prescriptive or descriptive? When you found that, like, there are no verses in the Bible. It's like a 500-plus-year-old invention. The same with chapters. It's just a little bit older, 200 years older. It's for navigation purposes. You have to read the whole thing in context. You have to read the whole chapter, read the whole book, and sometimes even more than books. It's like, it just doesn't. Don't have that. Again, we don't have that standard of scripture in Christianity.
Yeah, and it's another example of this being problem upon problem upon problem upon problem, which is only solved in the Islamic mind by lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. So, hey, Muhammad's in the Bible. Well, according to the Bible, Muhammad's a false prophet. Not only is he a false prophet, he's the most obvious false prophet in history, according to the Bible. I mean, no one had the collection of characteristics of a false prophet that Muhammad had. Someone might have one or the other, but Muhammad had this massive collection of characteristics of a false prophet. So according to the book that Muhammad is appealing to for to support his divine mission, he's a false prophet. And so, hey, wait a minute, we go to the Bible and it's filled with claims that make Muhammad a false prophet. What do? Oh, the Bible's been corrupted. So wait a minute, the book that is supposed to confirm him is a corrupt book. Very strange that he made that the criterion of his prophethood when it's a corrupt book. Very strange to say, hey, that false corrupt book says I'm a prophet. Okay, well, that would make you kind of a false prophet then wouldn't it, right? So you've got that. Then you've got the fact that in order to try to make sense of this, they'll go to passages and try to make them fit Muhammad. But then after 14 centuries, I mean, these are the best ones they come up with. And every last one, all you have to do is read the passage to say, hey, if you're saying that's about Muhammad, then great. Muhammad's a guy who's in stubborn rebellion against Allah. Oh, and if you're right, and this is talking about prophets, then there's another prophet here who's coming after Muhammad. And so Islam would be false for that reason. And just notice what they do. I mean, I understand a Muslim who hasn't read this passage hearing Zakir Naik say that this passage is about Muhammad, and I understand a Muslim believing, his apologist and thinking that his apologist speaks the truth. But two things there. One, how do you not then recognize that the guy you like, your Zakir Naik or whoever, is a complete liar as soon as we point out what the passage actually says? How do you not say, wait a minute, this guy's a liar? I need to go back and examine the foundations of my religion, because the guy I've been listening to, everything he says is a lie. So how do you not recognize that he's a liar when it's pointed out to you? And two, notice, I pointed out that a Muslim who simply heard that this is what the Bible says and that this confirms Muhammad, and he saw it on a website or something and hasn't read it, he may actually believe it. He may not be trying to lie. For the Muslims like Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik who actually read that passage, they are clearly lying. All you have to do is read this
Yeah.
passage and say, wait a minute, if that's about Muhammad, then it's condemning
Yeah.
Muhammad, because this passage is condemning people here. This is a condemnation. So if you're saying that's about Muhammad, you that's clearly there. So people who have read it and then go to their followers and say, aha, this proves that Muhammad's a true prophet, they know they're lying. And we point out and show that they're lying. And for some reason, you'll still believe them and get mad at us for pointing out all the lies. What is this religion, man? What is the obsession with lies? And just the idea that lying is the greatest thing in the world. The more lies, the more lies, the better. It's some strange stuff.
I think we've got to understand why there is a need to find Muhammad in the Bible. It's because the Quran says that if people look, they find Muhammad in the Bible, and in one passage it even calls him Ahmed, in the Bible. And so, and bearing in mind this is the Bible of the 7th century that the Quran is saying is not corrupted, but we're lying about saying that Muhammad's not in there. And so the Da'i have got this imperative to find Muhammad in the Old Testament. They've got this imperative to find him in the Injil, because the Quran says that he can be found in Torah, Injil, and Zabur. And that's the Psalms, by the way, for anyone that know what I'm talking about, the writings of David. Now, and so they come up with these examples, Song of Solomon, for instance, which is, for instance, there's always one good Muslim that will destroy it for everyone else in a moment of honesty. So the Muslim scholar who's in charge of Islam QA, Islam Ka, if you look at what he says about the Song of Solomon argument, he completely destroys it. He says that linguistically it's wrong, and the Song of Solomon argument is Muhammadim in the Hebrew is a reference to Muhammad. And he completely destroys it. He says that linguistically are wrong. It says that that it's a complete fabrication to use this argument. He's destroyed this argument that was popularized by Da'i, who were literally making stuff up because they have a reason to. Because if they can't find Muhammad in the Bible, then that means the Quran's another error in it, because the Quran says Muhammad is in the Bible. And what I find really interesting is what's the popular verse that shows Muhammad in the Bible has changed over time. It used to be John 16. Now it's, is it Isaiah 41 or 42?
42.
Is their new 42. Isaiah 42 is the new favorite, but it used to be the Songs of Solomon. It used to be Deuteronomy 18:18 is still a kind of popular one. The Songs of Solomon is a popular one, but it's quickly dying out. The Gospel of John 16, is a dying argument. So they're changing their argument based upon the fact that they come out with this crap. Mm-hmm. Lots of ignorant Christians.
Bob, are you saying that Muhammad is not the incarnated husband of Solomon's wife in that erotic love poem?
I am saying, yes, that Muhammad is not... I'm basically saying that if you take that literally, Muhammad's gay, because it's a man talking about Muhammad, So he is lovely. Remember, it's like, but sorry, that's a look at the passage, the kind of eroticism that's in there. But the point is, it's a destroyed argument, and these connections that they're making is to try and prove the Quran correct. That's where it's coming from. And since there's no evidence for it, they're forced to lie.
Mm-hmm.
But it puts us in a... Go on, David.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, notice the parallels with, the argument from perfect preservation. It's, here's our proof. The Quran's been perfectly preserved. And that worked in an environment where no one knew anything about the history of the Quran. Then people start learning about the history of the Quran and bringing the reality to the attention of the Muslim population. Then the it's not the scholars who decide, hey, we're going to tell people the truth. It's the people who are confronted with actual facts and then running back to their scholars and said, wait, you said perfect preservation, but Hatun's got 37 different Qurans over there, and they're all saying different, they're saying different things, and she's showing us the Arabic. So what's going on here? That's just dialects, different dialects. And Hatun, they're just different dialects. And then, oh, wait a minute, no, these are actually different meanings of different words. That's not gonna work. So they go back to their scholars and, oh yes, because they're the different kirat, and yes, they're complementing each other. They're constantly changing their story to defend something that they made up in the first place. But it's the same situation with these prophecies. Like you pointed out, it's, hey, here's the latest prophecy that we found about Muhammad, and that works in an atmosphere of ignorance where no one knows anything about that. And then as soon as you actually, hey, well, let's read the passage. No, we don't want to go to that one anymore. We've got this new one. Ha ha! And that works in an atmosphere of ignorance until people start refuting it. And then, oh no, that's not our prophecy anymore. Now we're going to this other one. And it's every single argument they use. It's like, let's find an argument where no one knows anything about what we're talking about, so they can't refute the lie. And let's spread our religion as fast as we can using that lie that no one can expose because they don't know what we're talking about. And we'll use that until people actually do the research, refute the lie. But by that time, we'll just change the argument to something else. And it's like, guys, again, what is this religion that's just obsessed with building itself upon nothing but lies and constantly shifting what the argument is? It's just
it's because it works, David. It works. The reality is, huge sections of the body of Christ are completely ignorant and get easily duped by these arguments. And the thing that's important with it, especially within the Da'i, is winning. They don't care about truth. They don't care about being sincere. What they care about is winning. And they found a tactic that works, and it is basically playing on the ignorance of the church. And that's our fault, really.
And now it's finally catching up with them after relying on this method for 14 centuries. Now we get down to the age where the internet allows us to spread refutations very, very quickly, and it's catching up with them. And so what are you getting? You get an avalanche.
Definitely.
Chris,
we're going to have a whole like list of things that they've said. We're going to end up having an entire catalogue of lies that have been told by very popular, very well-known sheikhs, da'is, imams, and we just get to say, right, 1 decade ago, this was said. The decade before, this was said. And you can just trace it back. It seems like it's a religion that's running away from itself. It's trying desperately to. It knows it's coming. It knows its own destruction is coming, but it doesn't want to face reality yet. And it's kind of like if our religion can't be true, if we have to propagate lies in order to maintain this, well, we're going to destroy you in the process of doing it. We're going to have our little debates. We're going to use our tactics that are not geared towards truth, but just geared towards duping you. Like Bob said, but as much as we possibly can, so you think that we're telling the truth, and then we worry about the consequences decades later. I don't think it's a matter of decades now. I think it's a matter of years. I think they're at a point now.
I don't think they're even. I don't think they're that conscious of it. I don't think they're thinking to themselves, "Oh, we'll kick the consequences down later." I think that they're focused on just winning. And actually, like you said, we're going to end up creating this catalogue of here's what you said in the 70s, here's what you said in the 80s, here's what you said in the 90s, here's what you said in the early 2000s, and look, what you're saying in the 2000s contradicts what you said in the 1970s. What you say in 2020 contradicts what you said in the year 2000. It's the collapse of Da'i polemic and Da'i apologetic.
By the way, Chris, I don't know if you're interested in writing, but 101 lies told by Dawagandists would be a good one. And here's the exact quote of what they said, and here's the refutation. And even lots of times it could even be, here's a quote from Yasser Qadi saying perfect preservation down to the letter from the time of Uthman. Here's Yasser Qadi admitting that it's a lie during the same time to students of knowledge. Here's him being confronted with the inconsistency, and here's him lying to get out of it.
I'd have to figure out how to make sure it's just 101 and no more. But
you can make it 1,000,001, but that's going to be a long book.
That sounds like a fun idea.
All right, we want to do one more quick round.
Okay, how do you want to do it?
keep going. What do you got? What do you got, Bob?
Okay, so my final reason why Islam is clearly false is the complete and abject failure of Muhammad. Muhammad apparently, if you believe the Quran, established a perfect religion that gave perfect guidance to all people at all times in all places, and he established apparently this perfect political, economic, social, and cultural system. And yet, immediately upon his death, the whole thing fell to pieces. So, and so you ended up with this giant civil war between Muslims that didn't get the memo that zakat continues after Muhammad's death. They just thought it was like a personal offering that they were giving to Muhammad. Then you get this split because Muhammad didn't bother to really make it clear about how he was supposed to be succeeded. And so you get a split between the Shia and the Sunni and a number of other groups that emerged at the same time about who should be in charge. These groups continue to fight, sadly, and to kill one another even today and persecute one another. You get the fact that Islam needs to be, despite it being perfect, it needs to be continuously improved. And by improved, what I mean is things like, well, we don't know how, it's not clear from the Quran that we should pray 5 times a day, so let's make a hadith that makes it clear that we pray 5 times a day. We haven't got any instruction what is the formula of the Shahada, so let's make a hadith that gives us the formula of the Shahada to say. And we don't know how to do our wudu from the Quran, so let's make a hadith that tells us what how to do our washing and ablutions. And then it goes on that we then need to have this scholarly class that are never clearly identified in the Quran about how you identify which scholars to follow, who then make legal opinions upon these hadiths and upon the Quran. And these legal opinions themselves consistently change over 1400 years. So early Islamic scholars, the very earliest, were against the idea of killing prisoners of war. Later medieval Islamic scholars were in favor of, much more tolerable about killing prisoners of war. Later Muslim scholars are much more tolerable of the idea of women divorcing men, but the earliest ones were more against it. You get these constant opinions. And so what we see is Sharia law is not a legal system. Sharia law is a consensus of opinions. And those opinions shift and change over time. Islamic doctrine about Allah continuously evolves and improves. Islamic doctrine about the Quran evolves and improves. Islamic doctrines about the Hadith evolves and improves. Sunnis and Shia have different Hadiths, and all of this need for improvement, all of this adjustment, comes from the fact that Muhammad didn't establish a perfect system, and that's why it failed immediately after he died. He was just a 7th century warlord with a few quasi-religious ideas and a few religious legal opinions that suited himself, like when he needed them. By contrast, the church that was founded by Jesus Christ still exists today, unconquered and unconquerable.
Amen.
So that's my quick reason.
All right, Daniel, did you run out now?
No,
Okay.
but I will try to be fast as we are getting close to the 2-hour mark. So I'm just going to go to Jesus. There is just something about Jesus. It doesn't matter if it's if the true Christ that we read about in the Gospel and the earliest, and is same with the most of the Apocrypha and later sources. There's just something about Jesus. There's and that's the same in Islam. And I'm just gonna say that, well, Jesus is virgin born. Muhammad is not virgin born. Jesus is sinless. Muhammad is not sinless. Jesus is called the Messiah. Muhammad is not called Messiah. Jesus did miracles. Muhammad did not do miracles. And Jesus is called Word of God, and Muhammad is not called Word of God. And I'm talking about the Quran here. Jesus is called these things in the Quran. And I also have made videos on this. I have references available there on those videos and articles. But I can also go to very fast to the divine names that Jesus has in the Quran. Like Jesus is called first and last. He's called light. He's called king. He's called truth. He's called creator, or he is this, and he's forgiver. And is like, for example, in forgiver in Surah 20:82, Jesus is the forgiver, and in Surah 22:69, he's judge. Same as in the Bible, Jesus is the Holy One. Surah 59:23. I have many more of these available on my website and channel and videos, but yeah, it's just something about Jesus. And when I just see Muhammad and Jesus right next to each other, I can't be in doubt of who I think we can make a good case that Jesus is divine in the Quran, and Muhammad is not.
And by the way, for people who don't have a lot of experience having discussions with Muslims, and you're not sure where to go, two of the things that we've talked about here are great places to start, and that's one of them that Daniel just mentioned. Just comparing Jesus and Muhammad, even comparing Jesus and Muhammad according to the Quran, or according to the other Muslim sources, massive world of difference, even according to the Muslim sources. And the other one, of course, would be what we talked about earlier: learning what the Quran says about the Bible. That the Quran affirms the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the Jewish and Christian scriptures, and yet contradicts them. Those are good areas, because not everyone wants to start out blasting away at Muhammad and Aisha and stuff like that. Especially if you've got a Muslim friend and you don't want things to escalate too quickly. You're on comparatively safe ground, drawing out some comparisons between Jesus and Muhammad, or talking about the Bible and how the Quran confirms it and so on. But these are massive problems. These are massive problems, and if you can get your Muslim friend to see those problems, your Muslim friend might be on his way out of Islam there. All right, Chris.
Cool. So I think a good way of ending this is probably to talk about what I think are just the philosophical problems that Islam has, particularly to do with the nature of God and how Muslims view God in Islam. So one thing that always strikes out to me is they have 99 attributes, and one of them is the Creator. And because these attributes are inherent in Allah and they are eternal along with Allah, then that necessarily means that his attribute of being the Creator is an eternal one, and hence he is an eternal Creator, and hence there is a eternal creation, and hence they've committed shirk. It's quite a simple thing to follow forward, but it's something that, because they have that particular view of those 99 attributes, and because they hold them in that particular way as they historically have, they don't have much ground to run to. So they have to hold to that and figure out some way of getting out of it. You'll see Muslims try and say things like, well, the very fact, it's not as if he actually has eternally been creating, but rather he's eternally had the potential to create. But the issue with this is there's no reason to believe that that's actually the case, and it's a very sort of weak argument to try to get out of this clear contradiction that their own understanding of their own religion has. It's again trying to deviate from what's been traditionally taught in order to save Islam. Another one, real quick, talking about, this is more to do with Salafis in particular, but in effect, why does Allah have in the Quran actual body parts, and what is the appropriate way of understanding what those body parts are? There are many Muslims, particularly Muslims in Speaker's Corner, who will actively tell you quite openly that yes, Allah does have body parts. He does have a shin. He does have two right hands. He does have a face. He does have eyes. He has all these things. He has a foot. But we don't know what they're like. We just don't know. But we know that he has them, but we can't tell you what they're like. And they're definitely not like our body parts. And the more you try and press on this, and you more try to understand exactly how that makes sense and how it doesn't just boil down into nonsense, the more you realize they don't have any answers at all. They simply have to keep holding to this belief purely out of faith that Allah does have body parts. They are completely unknowable. They're not like our body parts, but they are in some way suitable to be called body parts. And I could go on. Allah's inability to have any kind of proper relationship with his creation. the fact that he is above his throne, but also descends to the lowest heaven. Actually, I think Bob, I think you mentioned that earlier. There's a ton of these philosophical problems. The nature of God is just so twisted and irrational. You can tell there's no philosophical background. Whoever was writing this, however this came to be, the Quran, they didn't understand what they were talking about.
And since that was a point about philosophical problems, I'll just give my final point connected to a lot of other issues that have been brought up about the overarching theological problem, namely that Islam is just theologically incoherent. And there could be tons of different examples of that. But I'm talking, if you just look at what Islam says about the origins of Christianity, let's say. So Islam affirms that Jesus is a prophet, and as we've seen, born of a virgin, performed miracles, lives this miraculous life. The Quran not only affirms that, but also affirms that Jesus was successful in his preaching and that he won followers who converted to Islam. Due to his preaching. So the Quran says that, the Jesus' disciples were saying, hey, we bear witness that we're Muslims. But then when Allah is about to take Jesus away, he tells Jesus that he's going to, don't worry, Jesus. This is Allah, says, I'm going to protect your followers until the day of resurrection. And then Allah says that after everything, Allah helped the true followers of Jesus until they became uppermost over the ones who rejected Jesus. And you can look at Yusuf Ali's commentary on that verse, Surah 61, verse 14, where Yusuf Ali says that this refers to Christianity taking over the Roman Empire. Right? That's when Christianity became uppermost. But notice, Allah says he's going to protect the true followers of Jesus, and that the true followers of Jesus, because of the help of Allah, the true followers of Jesus became uppermost. Well, great. Notice, Muslims want to say there's some sort of original Christianity that lines up with Islam. Great. Did that become uppermost? Did that take over the Roman Empire? Well, you notice it's incoherent. You cannot make sense of this. You cannot possibly make sense of this. There are two possibilities. Allah helped the right people or he helped the wrong people. If he helped the wrong people, then, oopsie, I promised Jesus I was going to help the right people, and I helped the wrong people, so Allah would be stupid. But if Allah helped the right people, then that would be Christians who believe in Jesus' death, resurrection, and deity, and the Trinity, because those are the Christians who became uppermost. Those are the Christians who permeated the Roman Empire. So notice there's no way out of this. And then you look closer and you say, the Muslims want to say that Christianity has been corrupted, even though Allah says he's going to protect the true followers of Jesus until the day of resurrection. Not that the Apostle Paul's going to come in there and corrupt things. But Muslims want to blame someone. And, last generation it was, the Council of Nicaea. That's where it was all changed, until you got people who actually knew what happened at the Council of Nicaea, and that didn't work anymore. So now then it was, the Apostle Paul did it, when earlier generations of Muslims affirmed the authority of the Apostle Paul, affirmed him as someone sent by Jesus. But now they have to blame the Apostle Paul. But look at what they're doing now. So now Allah said he's going to protect Jesus' followers until the day of resurrection. But oopsie, the Apostle Paul came in and just stopped Allah from doing what he said he was going to do. And then what do you have there? But then you got this additional problem. If you're talking about corrupting the gospel, I open up the gospel and it says that Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. Did Paul corrupt that? According to Islam, that's what Allah corrupted, right? Allah's the one who tricked people into believing that Jesus died on the cross, and therefore later appearances convinced them that he rose from the dead. It's Allah who convinced them of that. Don't blame the Apostle Paul. It's Allah. Allah corrupted Christianity according to Islam. He is the one who convinced people that Jesus died on the cross, which is what started Christianity. And that would be, if you follow this narrative, that would be what convinces Jesus' followers to go back to their thinking on the Old Testament and conclude that Jesus is divine. Allah started all of that. But wait a minute. Now you've got the guy who promises Jesus that he's going to protect his true followers until the day of resurrection, and then says that he did it, but the ones he helped and preserved and made uppermost are Christians who believe in Jesus' death, resurrection, and deity, when Allah is ultimately the one who corrupted Jesus' message and produced these doctrine. There's no way to make sense of this, guys. It is absolutely incoherent. And you know what it really, really looks like to our Muslim friends who are watching? What it really, really looks like is we're told that false prophets and false teachers are coming, and that they're coming to corrupt the gospel. And we look at the gospel according to the apostles as they go out and preach in the book of Acts, and it seems to have a lot to do with Jesus' death, resurrection, and deity. And we're told false prophets are going to come, and Muhammad comes along. Hey guys, we agree with you on Jesus being born of a virgin and performing miracles, and he's the Messiah, and he's sinless. We agree with you on all that. Just these three little things that we gotta get rid of. He didn't die on the cross. He didn't rise from the dead. He's not Lord. So let's just get past that. And so the Christian response should be that you are the most obvious false prophet who's ever walked the planet. You come with complete theological nonsense. You turn God into a deceiver in order to attack the gospel. There's no way this is from God. 0% chance. So our Muslim friends out there, you need to get out of this religion. All right. Any final thought? Go around. Bob, any final words here?
Yeah, my final words would be this. It would be to any sincere Muslims, because we know there are sincere Muslims. We've been sort of bashing the da'i, and sometimes we use the term Muslim when in our minds we're all thinking about this group of Muslims called the da'i, who are responsible for this bag of lies that they just constantly pour out on you and everyone else, and then you're encouraged not to question them. But I would want to encourage every sincere Muslim who watches this, because we know you exist. Like I say, this week I spoke with 3 Muslims who've all become Christians, to pick up a Bible and to go and find a knowledgeable Christian to talk to. Not just the next Christian that you meet, but go and find a knowledgeable Christian to go and talk to and ask them your sincere questions about what the Bible teaches. Go and actually learn about who Jesus really was in history. Go and learn who Jesus was in terms of his Jewishness and the Jewishness of the Second Temple that he walked in and walked around. And then ask yourself this question: what do you think about this Jesus? And if you, as I suspect you will, you'll consider him to be the most amazing human being that's ever lived, then I would ask you to consider the question whether you should follow him and become his student. That's my final thought.
All right, Daniel.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo Bob on that. The truth can handle it. So, I mean, in the Quran, Muslims are even encouraged to ask the people of the book. So try to since what we've been discussing for these 2 hours, their history is not in favor of Islam when it comes to this, and the evidences, the scriptural textual evidence, are not in favor of a corruption or this changing that Islam needs for this slogan. So just read the gospel and the Bible without these Islamic lenses, and pray about it. Reach out in prayer to Jesus, and again, we are not doing this thing because it makes us feel good. We want to take the words of Jesus seriously. We want to be with him for eternity because he's the maximal great being, and we also kind of want you guys to be there with us. So this is out of love, but it's not only about an order from Jesus. It's out of love. You guys are his image bearers, and again, truth can handle it. Bible's been under scrutiny for a long time. Now the Quran starts to get under scrutiny, the same Western standard that the Bible has been under for a long time. The Bible can take it, so now let's see how the Quran can take it. It's internet information, translations, is all available now. So let's put the same test to the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, final thoughts.
So to any sincere Muslim who's watching this, the questions I think I would love for you to ask yourselves and really wrestle with is, why is it that Allah allowed for the Christians to to be deceived for so long. For 600 years, Allah deceived everyone who thought they saw Jesus die on the cross, putting on what was in effect a magic trick to convince them of something that was totally different than what they saw. They were completely confused by exactly who it was who they thought they saw on that cross. Why is it that Allah doesn't love me as an unbeliever of Islam? Why is it that I can conceive of a greater being, a being that loves all human beings, who desires all of them to come to him? Why is it that your da'is, your imams, I mean, we've said it before, they've constantly lied to you, but at what point is that just going to be enough? Is that just going to be one lie too many? Why is it that they're telling you now that the Qur'an and the roof, they've always been honest about that. They've never tried to hide that from you and just tell you that there's just one Quran. Why do you think that is? And I hope that you pick up a Bible and you read the Gospels and you understand that the person of Jesus is much better understood from the historical account of the Gospels, because those were written at the time and those were written within the same century, not 600 years later. And those will give you the actual picture of who Jesus really was, and will actually draw you to the real, true God, and not a very confused God who doesn't understand exactly what he's doing. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Amen.
Yeah, and along some of those similar lines, Muslims, what arguments do you have to support your religion that aren't based on lies? I'm not familiar with any. And all the arguments you've been given to show that Islam is true, they're all lies, right? And if you look at Christianity, you look at Christian apologists. Christian apologists can be wrong. They can get things wrong. They can be mistaken. They can be biased. But I mean, I can't think of a Christian apologist, a popular Christian apologist who just goes around just making things up to support the religion. Why? Because we would call him out. Christians would call that man out. If a Christian apologist started walking around saying there's never been one textual variant in the entire history of Christianity, he would not be successful. It would not be just masses of people believing him and then eating it up and then all going, this is the proof of our religion. We would expose him. We would not allow him to lie about reality. And yet you go to your most popular apologists of the past decades, Ahmed Deedat, Zakir Naik, they're the biggest bunch of liars the world has ever seen. Why do they get in positions of such prestige in your religion? Why do they lie, knowing that people can just go look this up and know that they're lying? They know their audience and they know that it just doesn't bother you. It just doesn't. It's not a concern. So they know, Zakir Naik knows he can stand up and lie 1,000 times in a row and that not one of you will call him out for his lies. I'm talking about his fans. There could be some other Muslims, writing for a site or something like that who would call him out. But generally, he knows his followers are totally happy with him lying. And just, I mean, again, why is this so common in your religion? And are we mistaken to think that it has something to do with Allah bragging about being the best of deceivers and Allah telling Jesus one thing and then doing something else and then corrupting Christianity? Does it have something to do with Allah sounding a lot like Satan and then you worshiping him? Just a question. All right. Well, thanks to Bob and Daniel and Chris for joining me. I am handing this channel. I'm going to delete my content tonight and hand this channel over to Hatun. I'm going to have her keep this. I'll have her keep this live stream up for a few days or a week or something like that, so everyone who hasn't seen it can catch it. Most people who watch a live stream actually watch it afterwards, after it's been up, and then of course I'm sure these guys are gonna download it as well. But guys, in the description box you have links to their channels. These are guys who are on the front lines dealing with these issues, so check out their channels, check out their videos. And I was about to say, oh, no, I will. I was about to say, catch you next time. Yeah, there will be. Yeah, I was thinking there is no next time, but no, I have one more live stream tonight. So catch you all then.